right, good evening. I'd like to open the January 27th, 2022 El Dorado Planning Commission. Let's start with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Fellers.
Present.
Commissioner Hackler. Commissioner Hughes.
Here.
Commissioner Leeson.
Here.
Commissioner Long.
Here.
Commissioner Nichols.
Here.
Chairman Stewart.
Here.
Commissioner Watson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
We do, in fact. Okay, let's move to item number 2, approval of the minutes. Mr. Shivers sent out the minutes with our meeting packet. Is everyone able to review those? And if so, pending any corrections, I would entertain a motion for approval.
Commissioner Stewart, I see no corrections, so I'm going to move to approve the minutes from December 16, 2021.
All right,
I'll second it.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Item 3, new business. This is case number 22-01-REZ, public hearing for the consideration of a request to rezone 800 West 6th Avenue from R3 multifamily dwelling district to C1 general business district. Mr. Shivers, would you present the request, please?
Sure, the property in question, as you mentioned, is 800 West 6th Avenue. The property is roughly 160 feet by 140 feet, which is about half an acre in size. The property previously featured a home and accessory structure. The accessory structure was demolished in 2019, followed by the home in 2020. All that's left today is a pile of concrete rubble. Otherwise, the property is generally cleaned off, as you can see on our pretty up-to-date aerial here on the screen. Today, the property is zoned R3 multifamily dwelling district. On your screen, you'll see a zoning map that shows us what's in the area. Up to the far north and to the east, the gray is I-1. That's light industrial zoning. Typically, we see uses such as manufacturing, storage, and warehousing uses on those properties. The darker maroon color, the same as the subject property, that's our R3. That's a residential zoning that allows single-family, two-family, as well as multi-family dwelling units. The brighter red, that's marked C1, that is the proposed zoning today. That is our customer-driven commercial businesses that I will go into detail about here briefly in a moment. And last but not least, we have all that yellow to the south of 6th. That is R1, low-density residential, which primarily allows single-family residential. And one additional color farther to the west, that green, is MHP, that is mobile home park. All right, our comprehensive plan and future land use map call this area neighborhood mixed use. I shaded in this area on your map. It's primarily north of 6th and to the west of the railroad right away there to the east. As defined as a mix of residential types and small-scale commercial and institutional uses that are typically meant to serve the needs of the surrounding neighborhood. To revisit the exact uses allowed in these zoning districts, as I mentioned on the left here, I have the list of our 3 uses, which is single, 2, and multiple family residential uses. With a special use permit, one can also do a public assembly venue, which is typically a church that we most commonly see, as well as educational institutions, such as schools. On the right is our list of allowed land uses for C1 general business, the proposed rezoning. It allows a number of uses, and this is just some of the highlights. There's more in our zoning ordinance, but this is what we see most often. Retail, restaurant, self-storage units, medical clinics, professional offices, gas stations, daycare centers, and limited vehicle repair, which is typically like tires and oil changes, not major auto body work or engine rebuilds. With a special use permit in C1, you can also build garden centers, hospitals, nursing homes, and limited manufacturing, which is kind of light manufacturing, small-scale stuff. So the possible impacts that we've considered with this, anything with a customer-driven business that bring in traffic in, could be noise, could be lights, could be emissions. In our opinion, it's probably not going to add a whole lot, considering that this lot does front on West 6th Avenue, which is a heavily trafficked corridor, one of the top ones within El Dorado. So all these uses are very common with being next to that as well. C1 does require 2 things to help reduce potential impacts. One is any lights in the property are required to be shielded away from residential properties. Pretty important to consider, considering that there's residential to the south and a home to the west. Second, any property boundary that abuts a lower intensity zoning, such as to the west and to the northwest at R3, they'd be required to have a transitional screening buffer. That can be an 8-foot privacy fence. It can be a planting screen. And least common, it can be a planted berm, which is a berm with landscaping on top of it. And with that, you may have noticed my last line of my memo says we do not object to this rezoning request. And I put that tonight because after reviewing our comprehensive plan, our land use guidelines for development, our future land use map, we feel like this proposed zoning and existing zoning is consistent with this stretch of 6th Street. And it's consistent with what our comp plan and future land use map asks us to have in this area. And so in our opinion, R3 is a good fit, as well as C1. So I'm putting it in the hands of the Planning Commission this evening. And with that, I would like to invite the applicant up, Mr. Eddie Simmons. Mr. Simmons has the property under contract pending this rezoning.
Hello, Commissioners.
Hello.
I looked at the property and did put a contract on it and put some earnest money down. I'd like to put a C1 building on there with a storefront. If you look at the lot, it has a real nice blue spruce there. I believe that's what it is, a real nice tree. That's going to stay. The storefront will face East Street. It'll have 4x3 windows on each side of a walk-through door with a 4-foot porch with a 4-foot awning. And then I will make other arrangements to have eye appeal for that front of the building. To the east and north, we'll have a 12-foot overhead door with another walk-through door. There will be some storage in there and a marine upholstery business. The front storefront was going to have a jewelry and a clothing, but them owners bailed out, so that front will be to lease to other businesses, taking into consideration of what the City of El Dorado agrees with. And there will be lighting. The berm or whatever that, I'll consider that if this goes through and I get to purchase the property. And then if anybody's got questions, I'll be glad to try to answer what I can.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll, as we have questions, we'll call you back up.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I think we will go ahead and conduct the public hearing. So at this time, we will open the public hearing. Anyone in the room to speak toward this case, now is your time to come forward. If you would please state your name and address for the public record. It appears we have 0 takers. So with that, we will close the public hearing and open discussion by the Planning Commission. What do you got?
Can I add something, Chairman Stewart?
Please.
Okay. I haven't heard the exact opinions from some of the neighboring property owners, but I can tell you about 2 that did visit me and didn't appear to have any objections. I did meet with Mr. John Prather. He owns the properties to the north as well as this I-1 property to the north. He did come in and visit, got my notice, asked some questions. Didn't seem to have any objections. I invited him to the meeting, but like I said, he didn't appear to have a problem with it. Second, I did interact via email with the homeowner over here to the east. His name is Mr. Mike Korth. He did ask me a number of questions, but I haven't heard back from him, so I think that's a good sign. And that's all I've heard from him. We did send out notices to all property owners within 200 feet.
200 feet,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Thank you. Commissioners, discussion, questions?
Well, I'm going to start is, I've been by that lot hundreds of times, and I see those houses that are to the south, and no one said anything about it.
No phone calls, no emails, no voicemails that I've received.
By exterior lighting, are we talking about parking lot lighting or lighting on a building?
Typically, parking lot lighting, the big lights that are tall,
Uh-huh.
have to be shielded.
There's going to be a paved parking lot with lighting.
If it's approved, if it is built, you have to have paid parking, paved parking. Lighting isn't required. But, for example, a lot of businesses will put signs up, which will be externally or internally illuminated at night. So we can't shade those necessarily, I guess, if it's externally illuminated, but it doesn't necessarily apply to that. Any other lighting in the parking lot?
Well, I mean, I have some of the same concerns Commissioner Fellers does as far as residentials to the south and east and west and lights and all that.
What about access to and from the parking lot if there is a business there?
Sure. I talked with Scott Rickard, our city engineer, this morning about access. He said it would come down to what the final use is on the property and how much traffic it would generate. It could be to peak access, it could be Sixth, and it could be both. He said it will come down to the final proposed use.
Mr. Simmons, how big is your building?
Right now, I've got Dorado Building Systems, putting a bid in for 40 by 50. And the lighting right now is security lighting that will have dusk and dark security lighting. I'm not sure of what the footage is from where the lighting would be across 6th Street to the residentials. But I'm sure that the security lighting that I'm looking at that's shielded would only be down towards the ground at this time. And then later on, if I do add parking lot lighting, then I would get that cleared through whoever I need to get that cleared through. I don't want to put up some lighting and cause problems with the neighbors. I'll be the friendly neighbor.
Mr. Simmons, could you tell me again, what are you gonna store? There's
Can you
gonna be
step up
some,
here, sir? Thank you.
there's gonna be some,
Sorry.
you mentioned upholstery, marine, boat type of thing. What other things might you store?
Boats,
Boats.
and they would be inside, unless I consider putting some parking outside. It's according to how busy the individual gets. There will be some parking outside, and there'll be parking out front at the storefront. But it'll be mainly boats. It's a marine upholstery business where he takes boats out of seats and stuff out of boats and pontoons and stuff, reupholsters them and everything, puts them back in for a customer, and then the boat would leave the premises. So,
Storefront will face
Well,
Topeka or?
south. The storefront would face south. On the northeast will be a 12-foot overhead door for that marine upholstery business. So there's an existing driveway now next to the R3, which would be on the west south corner of the property. And then there'd be a request of putting another driveway in at that 12-foot overhead door. Right now, there is no curbing there, and I'm not really up to speed on what would have to be included in the driveway when it comes to curbing on North Topeka.
Yeah, and our focus here really is the land use, so we're certainly not the body that's gonna go through and make sure that all of your plans are in conformance. The city has mechanisms in place to see to it that happens in